Hello. In the recent Operation Sindoor, a military title often heard in briefings was the DGMO. So, what is a DGMO, or the Director General of Military Operations? One perception is that it is a military officer who has a line of communication with the enemy counterpart and they convey messages to each other through a hotline. Yes, that is true, but the DGMO is far more than that. Usually a senior general, the DGMO acts as the nerve center of military operations. He crafts the operational strategy, coordinates with other services, integrates gathered intelligence, and manages crises during escalated tensions. In fact, the DGMO is responsible for ensuring that the armed forces are operationally ready at all times. Perhaps there is no other position more important than the DGMO during a conflict. In 2017, when India was locked in a military standoff with China in Doklam, the DGMO was Lieutenant General Anil Bhatt. General Bhatt retired in 2020 and took on a new role as the Director General of the newly created Indian Space Association, an industry body of private space companies. The reason why an ex-military officer is heading a space group is very clear. India sees space as the next frontier in military defense. In his 38 years in the army, General Bhatt has held several other key positions and has led the 15th Corps in Kashmir, a critically vital position. General Bhatt is here with us today to talk about a range of topics. We will ask him about the learnings from Operation Sindoor, especially the importance of drones in future wars. We will ask him if a full-fledged war was an option. We will also talk about space as the new frontier of defense. General Bhatt, welcome to PTI. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, especially at PTI. One has, from childhood, seen your news, the credibility it has, and it's nice to be here with you.
Thanks. General Bhatt, you have been the DGMO of the Indian Army, and now you are the Director General of the Indian Space Association. Two very interesting areas of expertise. We will talk about the space later, but because the military aspect is much more topical, we will start with your tenure as DGMO. Now, the word DGMO has become very popular in India right now because it was mentioned so often in the briefings by the military. And people somehow have a concept now that the DGMO is meant only to talk to the Pakistani side, pick up a hotline, and kya ho raha hai, zara kam kariye aap, ladai kam kariye, or things like that. But a DGMO is far more important than that. It is one of the most key positions in the Indian Army. You are responsible for the strategy, for the organization, for the coordination, not just within the Army, but also with the other services, the other two services, with the civilian security forces, with civilian companies, because during war you need oil, you need communication, you need police help. So tell us a little bit more about the role of DGMO.
So, the DGMO is, as I would say, the right-hand man of the chief.
Army chief.
And now, of course, the CDS also.
Yes.
As far as everything goes about military operations, be it in peace or in war, he is responsible for planning, seeing the overall execution of it, and monitoring it. And that is not only the dimensions of what the Indian Army would be doing, but very importantly the coordination between the three services. Because today wars are not only fought in one domain, but they're always in multiple domains. So that very close coordination also happens through the DGMO. And in peacetime, a very important thing he is also doing is capability development. What do the forces require for the future? What are the new techniques of methods of fighting we will absorb? And everything to do with operations. And of course, in case of India, and with two very active borders, it is a busy appointment.
Now, in a warlike situation, like we observed during Operation Sindoor, is the DGMO's role also to stop the escalation? Are they somehow involved, or is that left to the political masters and the army chief?
What has happened and what has developed along with Pakistan is a very reliable and robust system which we call the DGMO's hotline. And that was established basically to ensure that small conflagrations on the LC do not develop and do not go out of hand. Control and also exchange information, men going astray or a helicopter going astray. It has happened before. So this hotline between the two is always there, and there is a weekly communication on it.
On every Tuesday, I believe.
While now, when the operations are going on, and very importantly with Pakistan, where the DGMO is more powerful maybe than the Indian DGMO, because he is the voice of the Navy and the Air Force also there. While here, of course, we have our own DGAO, there's a DG Air Operations and a DG Naval Operations, but we coordinate our things. So, by instinct, Pakistan uses this channel to communicate on behalf of the entire armed forces.
Okay. So how does this communication with your counterpart work? You were the DGMO during Doklam, one of the most important military episodes in India's history. Although I believe there is no DGMO on the other side of China, but there is in Pakistan. So I would just like to sound your expertise. How do you pick up the phone and कैसे होता है? Hotline is, how does that hotline work?
It's a very, well, we call it a hotline, meaning it will have priority over all other communications. But in case of India and Pakistan, there is a dedicated communication which links their operation room to our operation room.
In Delhi and Rawalpindi.
And Rawalpindi, okay. And it is in their GHQ where their duty officer picks up, and our own end there's a duty officer who picks it up. Okay. So of course it is 24/7, that is active, and if it is a call is given on that, one of our, the MO duty officer will pick it up. But on a regular basis, every Tuesday, DGMO talk takes place. Now in practice, it is not the DGMO himself, but a brigadier of his, who is called the DDG, communicates on a weekly basis. Whenever there is something important or critical, it is the DGMOs who talk. Okay. Now apart from the routine on Tuesdays, any time if the situation builds up or there is a requirement to directly talk between the two DGMOs, that happens.
And how do you address each other? You speak in English or?
Yes, we do speak in English. Yeah. And there's a very, because their DGMO is a Major General and ours is a Lieutenant General, many of them are courteous enough to even use sir.
I should just clarify that Lieutenant General is senior to Major General. Yeah.
So all the military courtesies are followed, and many of them do call you sir.
Okay. I believe you were a brigadier in the DGMO office when you were a brigadier. And you obviously were interacting with your counterpart on the other side. So it was less formal than a DGMO talk?
Oh yes, because there is a human factor, and for a good 1.5 to 2 years, both of you are on both sides of the thing. You talk of matters operational, you lay down what has been given by your side and he does it. And of course at some time you talk of other things also, maybe the weather.
And cricket?
Or maybe cricket.
Not a more serious topic. Operation Sindoor has not ended. The hostilities have ended, have calmed down. A large section of Indians believe that we should not have pulled back, and they're warmongers basically. There is no dearth of hawks in this country, and they talk about that India should have not ended the war. We should have gone and continued the fight and got the POK back. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, I believe no general wants a war.
Not at all. Firstly, I would very clearly clarify, India has achieved this strategic aim. What was the aim? To destroy all terrorist infrastructure and demonstrate our military superiority. And we have done both. We were very clear even on the day one, after Pahalgam happened, that the punishment will be to the terrorists, their leaders and their infrastructure. And we did that. We were very clear that we did not want an escalation. And that was also defined by the government on day one. Yes, we were prepared for, as the escalatory ladder climbs, if they would do anything more, we were prepared for that, and that is what we did. We raised the level as soon as he did something more. And as soon as he attacked the airfields, and we thought he has gone to a higher level, we have neutralized many of his airfields, which you are aware, and which led to they swing for peace and calling the DGMO and asking for the peace.
Right.
Let me tell you, a war, taking POK or whatever it is, I would not specify the aims. A full-fledged war should be a war of choice, taken by decision. That is what was planned this time. Yes, the Indian military was prepared for it if the escalatory ladder took you there. But presently our aim was very clear. We had to hit the terrorist infrastructure, and that is the Indian armed forces have very effectively hit it. What is most important is deterrence, and I'm very sure this will build up the required deterrence for Pakistan, especially after the Prime Minister has declared the new normal.
Yeah. Now, you just now mentioned the vast responsibilities of the DGMO, the critical role that a DGMO plays. You were DGMO in 2017. You and the subsequent DGMOs, did you anticipate this possibility that there could be something like this happening, that Pakistan would escalate it through the terrorist route, and then we would fight back?
Ever since Bombay happened, it was the government of the day as well as the armed forces were clear, and that is where options other than war were created. That if in case such incidents happen, what would be the various kind of responses? Like yesterday, one of the news channels said there were 10 options which were worked out. And I very much agree, because there would be options using different weapon systems, different kind of escalation metrics to respond to any such situation. So definitely, for so many years now, we know such a contingency can happen, and plans for such, not specific plans, but a number of options are and would be ready.
And we are obviously ready for a full-fledged war also.
Oh, yes. Whenever you do go for any action which is like we did Uri, where we went across and did a shallow raids, or we did Balakot when we raided a terrorist camp, and now when we increased it further to hit a number of places with Air Force and the Army, all this escalatory ladder requires being prepared for the worst case, and that is a war.
My personal opinion, and you can contradict me if you feel, is that war is completely futile, and all these warmongers who have been baying for Pakistani blood don't realize the cost of war. Of course, you are confident that you will inflict great harm on Pakistan, but it is obvious that they will also inflict harm on us, and our economic progress is at stake here. We would be set back by several years if we were to go to war, and even if we were to win the war, they would still inflict harm on us, and we cannot afford that. Is that fair?
I totally agree with you. I'll give two examples by people who know more than me. The Prime Minister Vajpayee had mentioned once, it is very easy to start a war, but it is very difficult to terminate it. And that gave very much a clarity. In war, the challenge is the ability to then stop a war.
Right.
And secondly, do you achieve your war aims, and at what cost? Yeah. Not that a nation should not be prepared for war, because if you are prepared for war, you prevent a war. And with any adversary, be it on the north or on the west, we have to be prepared, and the preparation is to prevent a war.
So what is the message you have for all those trolls on social media who are, left, right, and center criticizing the entire strategy of pulling back, of the ceasefire?
So what I would tell all my fellow countrymen is, war is a serious business, a very, very serious business. And a nation goes for it when all possible options are over. We had options less than war, and we have exercised them.
It's not a Bollywood movie where Akshay Kumar goes and wins it for you.
Yes. And we have to also remember, even an example of Israel, which is very often given in India. Israel is in an asymmetric war with a country. There is no country.
Yeah.
There is no army. There is no nuclear bombs on the other side. We have to realize we are dealing with an adversary which has a significant army. Not only that, has a very strong backer.
Yeah. one of the unique things that came out or emerged from this conflict is that although it was a conventional war, conventional as opposed to the nuclear option, it was unconventional in many ways in that drones were used, and drones created this or brought to the public consciousness a completely new technology. Tell us how that changed, how drones have changed the paradigm of war.
Very interestingly, the Nagorno-Karabakh war
In Azerbaijan, Armenia,
was where drones really came into limelight. And here was the weaker side, effectively with its drones, could neutralize the country which had more tanks or more guns.
Armenia had more tanks, Azerbaijan had nothing. They were on the verge of losing. They got the drones, and a 2 lakh rupee drone destroyed a 20 crore tank.
And distinctly, end of the second war there, it was a war which was won by Azerbaijan. But what was important is that everywhere, professional armies, and especially in India also, the armed forces realized the importance of this new dimension of war.
2017 or 2020?
The second one ended in 2020, it ended.
And that's when Indian Army realized the importance of drones.
And before that also drones had become part, because in the first war also it was used there. And like you said, the cost, the simple technology and the effectiveness of this new tool drew the attention of everyone.
Okay.
And fortunately in India, drone industry also, and thanks to the Prime Minister who gave a special push to the drone industry, a new rules were defined and a new ecosystem of manufacturing drones has been developed in India. So this plus the armed forces knowing, and the Indian armed forces knowing that this is one new weapon system which we need to use and use effectively, we were in a way prepared for it.
I was speaking to a serving general and he said that attack has become very, very cheap and defense is far more expensive.
So, and it is very simple. I would give example is if you have to send 40 drones to a objective, 40 drones to send, and if whatever the cost is, the cost would not be too much. But whatever can be destroyed at your site, the cost may be much higher.
Yeah.
And we have seen examples of that, what happened to the petroleum, that refinery of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
where the non-state actors could really put Saudi Arabia on a back foot.
Yeah.
So it is a vulnerability, and now to protect it, you have to have a very effective air defense system, which itself, when swarms are there, becomes very difficult. Not that there are no counters to it, but it is a challenge.
These drones that were used in Azerbaijan were provided by Turkey, and the drones that were used by Pakistan were provided by Turkey. Where does that leave us in terms of geopolitics of the South Asian conflict?
So definitely Turkey's support of drones is being highlighted in India, and it is a fact. But today, such manufacturing capability, Turkey has also been supplying it to both sides, most probably, definitely to the Russian side, which actually Turkey is a part of NATO, and it would have not been there. So it's, business of drones is different to strategic or geopolitical considerations. That is the way I would say. And many suppliers globally would now be there. They are selling it to you not because of geopolitical reasons, because it's a business.
It's business, yeah. So where do we stand in terms of our drone capability compared to Pakistan? Do we have enough drones to match theirs?
So definitely. But the most important thing in this is the surge. If you have to continue for a long time, you require much more drones, because some of them, the kamikaze or the drones, one time use, they are there. So a capability, much more of a capability has to be developed if in future there is a scenario like this. Like this time we had adequate numbers, there was no area of challenge. But now we have to definitely build up more capacities in India.
Yeah. We need to build our own drones.
And it will happen. I'm very sure it will happen.
Yeah. We'll just dwell a little bit more on the drones and then go to other topics. These drones come in all sizes and shapes and utilities. They can be very small, like Amazon uses drones to drop, products. They carry a payload of 5-6 kilos. Some drones carry a payload of 10 to 20 kilos, which means that they can carry an AK-47 or they can carry a camera, and they fly at different heights. Is that what makes the defense against drones more challenging?
Oh yes, because though they are at very slow speeds and theoretically they can be hit easily, but the issue is because of the size one, which is their radar signature itself is much smaller. Secondly, they fly at such a low level where many of the radars from a distance will not be able to catch them. There is a challenge to neutralize them, and one of the effective measures to neutralize them is break their communication, jam their communication, and many counter drone equipment is based on jamming their communication. But then there are also kinetic means, and fortunately for us, we had old vintage weapons which have proved very effective. That is the Zu-23s and LS-70s, which are primarily guns, and they have been refurbished and they have been now helped with the AI, and they have been very effective in this war.
Yeah. One other silver lining that came out of this conflict is the real live testing of our indigenous defense capability. Akash Tir is one, and AI-powered drones and satellite-backed surveillance. So was it in a way a reflection of the success that India is achieving in technological advancement of defense?
So definitely the Atmanirbharta which we thought of, and after the Prime Minister had taken over, it's more than a decade now, that has started effectively coming on ground. Of course, there's much more to do, and on the high end we would still require to import weapons. But definitely in low-end technology and even in some of the high-end technologies, we now are much better than we were before, and Akash has been one fantastic example of that.
Yeah. This is a good way to go into the space aspect of war. You retired in June 2020, and you started working on the creation of Indian Space Association in November 2020, and then you started operations in 2021, early 2021. It was unusual for a private body to be headed by a military person. Now it makes sense, because I think there was a clear vision on the part of the government that space is going to be an integral part of our defense system also. Now, for most people, when you think of space, you think sending a rocket up in space, but it's far more than that. It is satellite surveillance, it is surveillance, it is providing data for met data, weather data, communications, which are all very useful for defense. So tell me what your vision is for the Indian Space Association in terms of defense.
So firstly, I should clarify, the Indian Space Association is not only for defense, it is for creation of a space ecosystem in India in the private sector. And this was in fact a historic and a visionary step by the government when they decided that now we need to open up space for private players. And we do have a legacy of ISRO of 60 years of really putting India on the high table as far as technology goes. And in these 3 to 4 years, private space has really developed. We have 2 young companies, new startups, who have rockets, who have already fired pre-orbital rockets, and they will be having orbital launches this year or next year. And there are 5 companies who have made satellites. What is most important in this whole issue is now for military. Defense today, previously we used to say wars are fought in land, sea and air. But 2 new domains, very, very effective and important domains have now come in. That is space and cyber. And amongst that, both are very critical. I'll talk about space. Why is space critical? Firstly is it enhances the capability of all the defense forces in very, very critical domains of ISR, that is intelligence, surveillance and recce. Basically knowing where is the enemy. Secondly, for targeting, be it by missiles, be it by aircraft, be it by land forces, to get satellite imagery is very important to get the latest intelligence. And after you have hit an objective, firstly to guide a missile or guide an aircraft, you require navigation, which is also through systems like Navik, which we have in India. And thereafter, for communication also, satellites are today used extensively. Primarily they are in the geo, but now the new disruption in space is that the satellites have come down to the low Earth orbit.
What height, what altitude are we talking about?
Low Earth orbit is actually defined from 500 to 2000 kilometers, but generally the present constellations are at 500 and 700.
And the geostationary orbits are much 36,000 kilometers, and they stay in one location.
They move along with the rotation of the Earth and look at as if they are seeing at one place only from.
Yeah. So the sum and substance of what you're saying is that the whole paradigm of war and defense has changed and will continue to change, and the future wars will be fought in space, in cyberspace, and with drones.
So what I have told you is all the enhancement of the capabilities of the forces in the three critical dimensions of ISR, PNT, that is navigation, and satellite communication, and meteorology. But in the future, any country will have to protect its assets in space, and also know what are the adversaries' assets in space. And that brings into a new domain of space domain awareness, and also have the ability to hit the adversary. And that is where what you're talking is the space war. We are no country has declared any weapon systems to fight in space presently. But countries have demonstrated capabilities to have anti-satellite weapons. They are both in the domain of kinetic weapons, and India also did the test. We were the last ones to do it. And apart from that are non-kinetic weapons like laser dazzlers, other weapons which can be there. They are kamikaze satellites they are talking of, which will go near an adversary satellite and destroy it.
You're kidding me.
And China has
Kamikaze satellite, a suicidal satellite which will go and kill itself and kill the other satellite as well.
Yes.
In China, you said, has it?
Has been demonstrating such capabilities from videos and all which they've been taking out and all. Because this is very, in space it is in a growing dimension, this war.
Yeah.
Because what has happened is now we are looking at not making new satellites, but repairing satellites in space. And very recently, if you know, India did the space docking capability.
Yeah.
That is two satellites met together. Yeah. So this technology in the future will be used to refuel old satellites. That a satellite actually a satellite dies not because its components go away or something. It dies primarily because its source of energy goes away. So now techniques are being found to refuel a satellite.
See, this context has become clear now. When the docking happened, we were not sure why it was important. So this is why it is important.
It is important for this, and also when we have to put a human being on moon, when we have to make a Bharat Antariksh station, for docking there is a very, very critical element.
Now we have an umbrella or a network of satellites connected to each other which supply all this information. What we have, is that enough or do we need more?
Presently, we have 9 to 10 military satellites, and they have a good resolution, they have a capability, but our revisit times are 5 to 6 days or even more.
What does that mean, revisit time?
That when do you visit the same place?
Okay.
Say so it is Pasrur.
Okay.
So I cannot be seeing Pasrur 24/7, which is desirable by the forces.
Okay. Okay.
In future, that is what we would like to have. And here again, in the middle of last year, the government finally announced SBS-3, Space-Based Surveillance 3, which is 52 new satellites which are being made for defense, basically for ISR.
Okay.
This would enhance the capability of revisit to nearly a day.
Okay.
But what is being desired by defense forces today is persistent surveillance. That you do not lose sight of the objective or your target areas. That would require a little more satellites. But 52 are in the offing, and as per the plan, they are out of that. And what is very important is 31 are being made by the private sector.
Okay.
and it's about a more than 28,000 crore project. And the three consortiums have already been identified by NSIL, that is the private public sector company of ISRO, and orders are being given to these companies. But for the satellites to be effective in space will take another 4 to 5 years. I'm very sure now the government is going to ask these companies to speed it up. Of course, it cannot be speeded to 6 months or 1 year, but to the shortest possible time which is possible. These 52 satellites definitely will increase our capability a lot. Today, our gap is filled by companies like Maxar, Planet M, and other international companies. Definitely, we would be taking the best resolution to be available for our defense forces from wherever we get.
But we would obviously want our own satellites to be provided.
Because shutter control is very important.
Who clicks the picture?
And then you know what you can take and what you cannot take.
I'm really glad that a military man is heading this venture.
Oh, it's been a great learning. And what I have learnt is that being a man in uniform, maybe at times I thought, and of course I believe that I was in the best possible service I could do for the nation. But there are great people who are working for India, and that are the scientists of ISRO. They've done a great job with frugal finances and with a great motivation to do something for the nation. If we are at a level where now our private sector is also growing, it is thanks to what our visionary forefathers did and what ISRO is doing for the last 60 years.
And DRDO as well?
Oh yes, DRDO is also, along with ISRO, has been doing it, but primarily the space is being led by ISRO.
And what about the young startup creators in space industry?
What is very important, and where the government's initiative of declaring this space policy has really helped, is we have young men who are technologically very well endowed. They also know how to run business, and they are going into this domain with total zest and excitement.
Yeah.
And that is why we have today companies like Pixel, we have companies like Dhruva, we have companies like Skyroot, many of them who will put us at the highest table internationally.
Our satellite capability, our space capability is far superior to Pakistan's. But we should not be complacent, because Pakistan has a very strong ally whose satellite capabilities are much better than ours, China.
So yes, you're right. And the Ukraine war brought out one new dimension. And that new dimension was commercial space companies providing communication and ISR. Ukraine, which had hardly 1 or 2 satellites, while Russia was a credible space power comparatively, on ground, Ukraine had everything from space. And as you're aware, Starlink rushed those 2,000 plus discs there for SAT communication, and all what was being jammed by Russia for Ukraine, that didn't have any effect, because then they had satellite communication. Similarly in ISR, they had the best of all these commercial companies. So these commercial companies providing ISR for defense forces is the new dimension.
I just want to go back to your DGMO days when Doklam was happening. Would you like to talk about the behind-the-scene role that you played during that 73-day standoff?
So one thing, and what I can make out now has evolved much more, is at the highest level. And at the highest level I am talking is for security, the NSA along with the Foreign Secretary, the bosses of IB and RAW, the CDS, the 3 chiefs, the DGMO, they meet together and they work out things not once in 24 hours or once in 4 days, but nearly regularly. And this is done by consultation, by sharing ideas before these very challenging decisions are made and put up to the Prime Minister. And this system started then in Doklam, and I'm very sure it is much more evolved now.
Yeah. What do we do about Pakistan? In a very reflective mood, it's like a fishbone. You don't want to go to war, a full-fledged war, even though you know that you have better capability. But at the same time, you have this really major irritant which sponsors terrorism. We cannot allow that also to happen. So maybe I'm asking you to wear a third hat of a politician and or a strategic person and tell me what.
So, this is one thing which is a challenge for anyone who is in India and who's thinking of Pakistan. First, we have to identify who matters in Pakistan. And there is only one person or one organization called the Pakistan Army. And Pakistan Army is relevant to Pakistan, is powerful only if there is a threat. And that is why there is an excuse called Kashmir or whatever. They have to have something to distract the attention of all the people and continue to stay in power. And if you see this one also build up similarly, when they were having problems in Northwest Frontier, they were having problems in Balochistan. Within the army, there was a lot of stress. And as you know, the Pakistani army was at its nadir when the corps commander's house was attacked last year. From there and what even the political exertion by Imran Khan, now the Pakistan army had to again become relevant. And that is why I assume what happened in Pahalgam. Now this is what, will the Pakistan army change? How do we handle it? My view is, one is the method we have applied here, and we have set a new normal. You cross the red line, we will hit you. Of course, it will require us to be more prepared. It will draw attention to this. But for Pakistan, there is no other method. One is that. The IWT has been a very effective method to be used. And thirdly, I will say which one of the Western experts says. She has written a book on the Pakistan Army. She's examined the Pakistan Army very intimately. And once while I was talking to her and I asked her the same question you asked me, what should we do with Pakistan? And she told me, look, General, India today is growing. It's up to you. You put Pakistan on your front screen and drive your car. Or look at economy and keep driving it. Keep them in the rear view mirror. Don't distract yourself from what they are doing. But they should not be what should make India go forward.
Which is what we had been doing since Kargil. And now, but Pakistan suddenly, obviously it needs a raison d'etre to survive.
Because the basics is, the Pakistan Army is not Pakistan Army, it is Pakistan Ins. They own housing societies. The money, they make roads. Right. They do business in hotels. Everything, they are only relevant because there is a threat.
Like the Myanmar army, which does the same thing. Pakistan had an edge earlier because in Kashmir it had some support. Now that support has completely ebbed, and by and large the Kashmiri society is very much with India.
So in this whole Operation Sindoor which happened, one very important dimension which would have been Pakistan's desire to have communal riots in India, have the Kashmiris also being attacked. The Indian people have really behaved in a very mature way. We have what Pakistan's aims would have been achieved if we had strife internally. Definitely we are a majority Hindu country, but we have all other religions and all of them have stood up with us together. We have to very clearly differentiate between a Pakistani and an Indian.
That's the ultimate litmus test. Pakistan, India. That's what it is. Great. General Bhatt, thank you so much for talking to us.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you. It was very nice to meet you and also to have this interview.
Thanks.